Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you're new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna and I have another case for you all today. Today we'll be going through a missing persons case. This was recommended by Zai. Their name on Instagram is ZaiDTR. So if you see this video, thank you so much. Zai actually sent me quite a few missing persons cases. This one I chose because there was enough information to incorporate into a full video, and also when we get to the end, you'll understand that the answers to this case are so close but so far at the same time. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Wendy Khan was born in 1971 and she was 46 at the time of her disappearance. Wendy had 2 children from a marriage that ended some years before she went missing, and she was especially close to her daughter, who is named Anissa. 6 months before her case took place, Wendy had moved back to Minnesota from Pennsylvania actually, and began living full-time with her boyfriend, who was named Muhammad Bilal Shungtai. The town in Minnesota is named Mankato, and this was actually the perfect place because she got to be really close to her daughter. Her daughter lived just behind where Wendy lived with her boyfriend, and the two of them were super close, so it was just the perfect setup as far as them being able to spend time together and being in close proximity. The two were actually planning to get a house together. They were looking to live together. Anissa says that her mom was a kind person who was so loving, so caring, and she actually was really shy and quiet around people that she wasn't familiar with. But the relationship that she had with her daughter was so tight that Anissa would see all of the quirky and fun and goofy sides to her mom. They really enjoyed each other's company as Anissa got older and made it through her teenage years and was becoming an adult and started working. The two of them were in large part friends. Wendy had a song that she would sing to Anissa that she even continued to sing as Anissa grew into an adult, and she really was just a very nurturing and loving mom. She was this way with many people around her, and friends that knew her all the way from high school always had incredible things to say about her. Everyone really sang her praises. She was supportive of the people around her and had a gentle and soft-spoken nature that made everybody feel comfortable when she was around. And the job that she did fit her personality perfectly. She worked at a group home for adults with disabilities, and the people that she worked with loved her, and she loved her job as well. The only downside, I guess you could say, about her current situation was the dynamic of her relationship with Muhammad. The two were together for about 8 years before she went missing, and she had moved back to the area and lived with him full time, but he really had a strong and controlling personality that existed throughout the course of their relationship, and that's in large part why Wendy, as far as I could tell from the research that I did, why Wendy was looking to live with her daughter. It would be a fresh start, a better living situation. We don't know that she was looking to end the relationship. Those details are not anything that I found, but we can kind of deduce that her at least living in a separate household was more ideal for her than living with Muhammad. But while they were together and living together, he had many blow-ups, many episodes. But even when he would have his blow-ups and they would have their run-ins with each other, she never would call and report it. She wouldn't let the police know what exactly she was dealing with at home with him. And he does have quite a history of tendencies, and we will get into that as we go through the case. Anissa and her brother never liked Muhammad either. They always thought he was kind of odd, that he was just unordinary, but not in a positive way. And even from the time they were young, Anissa was in 8th grade when her mom and Muhammad started seeing each other, and she remembers that her and her brother had a funny nickname that they would call him just to make light of the situation, but they really truly did not enjoy being around him. They didn't like him as a person. At the time of the case, Anissa was about 19 years old. From what I could tell, she was between the ages of 19 and 20 years old. And she would spend a lot of time with Wendy. Since they lived so close to each other, They would go to each other's places, spend time, just do miscellaneous things together, and they would talk on the phone and text often as well. On May 31st of 2018, Anissa had an appointment that she actually needed to go to, and Wendy decided to tag along with her, sit in the appointment, wait for Anissa, and then once the appointment was over, the two of them came back to Wendy and Muhammad's house to relax. They sat on the couch, were watching TV, just chilling. And Muhammad came home in some sort of rage and said that Anissa needed to get out of his house. And Anissa knew the kind of person that Muhammad was, so I don't know exactly how she responded to this, but from what I could tell, she was just over it. She was like, look, I'm not, whatever. So she just left the house, and of course Wendy was pissed. She was mad that Muhammad would tell her daughter that she had to leave. What was that all about? So Wendy followed Anissa out and actually just took her back home so Anissa didn't have to walk all the way home. The next day, June 1st, was a Friday, and it seemed totally normal. Anissa and Wendy exchanged text messages. They had a 15-minute phone call between the two of them, and everything seemed to be in order. Anissa did notice some bickering when she was talking to her mom, between her mom and Muhammad. It seemed like they weren't getting along that day. It was concerning enough to Anissa to let her mom know that she could come stay with her, that she didn't have to stay in the house with Muhammad if she didn't want. She could just come spend the night at her place, have some peace of mind, you know? Wendy thanked her daughter, but said it was okay, that she was just gonna stay in her house for the night. And Anissa had some friends who were actually planning to get together. So she ended up getting dressed and going out for the night, and everything seemed to be totally normal. So the very next day, on Saturday, Anissa woke up, reached out to her mom, but didn't hear back in the time frame that she would normally hear back from Wendy. And she decided to pick up the phone and call a few more times. She actually called multiple times. And when Wendy wasn't picking up the phone and not calling her back or sending her a text or anything, Anissa thought it was weird enough that she would get up and walk over to her mom's house to see if either she or Muhammad were there, just to make sure everything was okay, just to check in. I mean, she was of course on alert, but she wasn't on super high alert because it had just been that day that she couldn't get her on the phone. So when she walks over to the house, she sees her mom's car in the driveway. It is a black Nissan Sentra. And she looks through the window on the first floor where it was usually open. You could see right into it, and the location that Wendy would typically put her purse and her keys, those kinds of drop off when you walk in the door items, her normal spot, they weren't there. So Anissa's like, okay, she's probably just out with Muhammad. I'm sure it's nothing. Maybe they're just enjoying their day and I can just chill. So for the rest of that night, she didn't hear back from Wendy, but she just decided to give her mom some space and figured that Wendy would get back to her in the morning. When Saturday night turned into Sunday morning and Wendy still had not gotten back to Anissa, she became really worried. The concern set in. She was just panicking. She didn't know what to do, but she had to go to work that day. She went to work in the morning, and then as soon as she got off work and still had not heard anything from Wendy, she actually called her biological father, which is Wendy's ex-husband, and she was in a panic. She called him at work, went through the HR department, let them know like she needs to speak to her dad right away. And she said to her father, I cannot get mom on the phone. Something is wrong. She's not at home. I don't know what's going on. This is weird. Like, we need to do something. So the two of them actually get together, and he goes with her to the police station to attempt to file a missing persons report. So they get to the police station, and you may not be surprised that they didn't have the best experience. They felt like the police were brushing them off. The first encounter really just left a bad taste in Anissa's mouth, especially. So she went to explain to them, look, I haven't heard from my mom. This is not like her. She's in a relationship with a man who has a history. And when explaining this, the officer that was there and listening to what they were saying said to Anissa that Wendy probably just went off to play the victim. I don't know how that is even relevant to filing somebody as a missing person, but that is what this cop said. And Anissa was obviously offended, because whether that's the opinion that they formed or not, why would you say that to somebody who is concerned about their family member? But also, Anissa knows her mom, and no, Wendy is not the type of person to be manipulative and just disappear because she's trying to get back at her boyfriend. It doesn't make sense. So, but the two of them left the station that night with a plan to go back the following day. Something that Anissa has said since her mom disappeared, in current day, she has mentioned that she felt back at the time her mom disappeared that because she was a teenager just becoming an adult, they weren't taking her as seriously as they probably would have taken her if she were older, or if the roles were reversed and this was a mother looking for their child. But nevertheless, the next day, Anissa and her father go back to the police station to hopefully speak to another police officer, somebody different. Luckily, they do. The missing persons report is filed, there is a notice sent out, and the police begin a search. One of the first places police looked was the Minnesota River, which runs right through Mankato. They took their sonar, went out on the river, and did basically like an underwater sweep where they could see if anything was under the water. But at the time that they did the search, around the time Wendy went missing, there had recently been a huge rainfall, which left the river at higher levels than normal, moving much more rapidly than normal. So as you may imagine, that made the search extremely difficult. Police didn't have any luck with this search, and the end result of the search was that there was no sign of Wendy in the river. And they decided that it would probably be best to return to the river once the levels had gone back to a normal height. When they're deciding to pack it up, Anissa's like, well, I know we searched under the water, but can we consider searching the actual riverbanks and maybe the trees and shrubs and bushes along the riverbanks? You guys looked under the water, which is great, but I feel like maybe we could use some people on the shoreline to do a search that way in case her remains washed ashore. And the police basically said that whatever sonar system that they had was effective enough to not only search the floor of the river, but also the sides of the river. And to Anissa, this was not sufficient. She didn't feel like that was the answer that they should have been giving her. She could tell that they had the resources, they had the ability and the capability to continue searching, to do a bit more thorough of a search. But they basically shrugged her off and told her, no, what we did was enough. Police did speak with Muhammad to see if he knew anything at all, and the only thing he really said to them was that Wendy left him, ran off with another man, and disappeared. And because of this, he had no idea where she was. He retained an attorney almost immediately, and he seemed to be cooperating in the beginning with the police, but he really didn't say much to them other than this running off with another man's story that pretty much nobody was buying, especially Anissa, because there was no other man she knew of. But even if there was, Wendy wouldn't leave Anissa. It goes without saying, but Wendy would not have abandoned Anissa this way. So Anissa was definitely side-eyeing Muhammad at this time, but the police really didn't seem like they were on to him. They didn't seem like they were really pursuing him heavily at all. Within days, y'all, within days, literally, of Wendy going missing, Muhammad put his house up for sale. And with this information, the police knew that they had to hurry up and do a search of the house. They just wanted to get in the house to do a walk around just to make sure Wendy wasn't actually there. So the BCA and the Mankato Department of Public Safety executed a search immediately so that way they could get in there before the sale of the house took place. As the police and the detectives were going through the house, it was about 8 hours. Muhammad actually sat in his car across the street the entire time. He was sleeping in his car, doing whatever in his car the entire day. He didn't go off like most people would and like go to the store or something. He literally just sat in his car. But police did notice something a little odd, which was that the whole basement had been cemented over. Not just patchwork, not like a spot that needed a touch up. The entire basement floor had been re-cemented. But they did apparently search this. According to Anissa, they were thorough in the search of this basement specifically, and they confirmed that Wendy could not have been under the cement in the basement. While it doesn't seem that police took any forensic evidence from the house, they were able to confirm that Wendy was not in the home, and there didn't appear to be any obvious signs of foul play in the home. They did notice though that all of her belongings were pretty much still there. So she had left everything behind except for her cell phone and her purse, which meant that wherever she went, she didn't plan to be gone for long. So the search of the home resulted in nothing, and police decided that since she was liked by a lot of people, they were just gonna go out, do some informal interviews, ask people if they had seen anything, speak to people throughout the community. In addition to this, they went to different businesses and establishments that Wendy would frequent to see if they had any employees that noticed her come in their establishment, but literally nothing resulted in anything. Everybody said they had not seen her at all. It was like she vanished. People who knew Wendy and who had heard about her disappearance all came together to put up flyers and to do ground searches of the town, and there was no sign of Wendy anywhere. But people wanted to keep hope alive. They wanted to put forth their efforts and bring her back home for her family and her daughter and her son. There was not much to go on until someone spotted Wendy's vehicle on June 7th, and they called it in to police to let them know that it was parked behind a CVS, and it looked like one of the tires was flat. Wendy's vehicle was parked at the 200 block of Bell Avenue, just behind a CVS, like I said, that she went to actually very often, and it had a notable flat tire that wasn't just a flat tire. It had clearly been slashed with a knife or other sharp object. I'm adding in a little clip here just to clearly explain where exactly her vehicle was found. So if you look at the CVS that's circled here, her car in relation to the CVS was down the street. It looks like that is Long Street that runs right to the right of the CVS. And then if you look at Bell Avenue, her vehicle was found on the next block over. It says the 200 block, which would be here. So it leads you to believe that somebody possibly slashed her tire in the CVS parking lot. And when she went to pull off from the CVS, she realized that her tire was going flat and she didn't make it all the way. So it's a suspicious occurrence to happen. We don't know if that is actually what happened or if someone just happened to park the Nissan on this block, ironically near the CVS that she frequents a lot. But yeah, so just so you guys have a clear idea of where exactly her vehicle was found. You know, obviously finding this vehicle was a step in the right direction, but there was still no sign of Wendy. And her car, aside from the flat tire, there was nothing obviously out of place. So the house yielded nothing. The car yielded nothing. And back on the side of Muhammad, he actually dropped the price shortly after putting the house on the market. He dropped the price of the house significantly. And this is alleged. Apparently, he initiated a price drop that was significant enough for people to notice, and what many think is an attempt to get the house sold even faster, right? Obviously. And he was able to find a buyer in a short span of time. As a surprise to everyone, after the house sold, he vanished into thin air. He packed a bag of just a few belongings and he fled the town. He didn't even stay long enough to collect payment for the house that he just sold. He literally dropped everything and left. His car was left behind. His cell phone was left behind. He didn't take any of the tools that he used for his job as a mechanic. And there were people who had dropped their vehicles off with him to get their vehicles serviced. He abandoned those as well and gave absolutely no notice to his actual employer that he wasn't planning to return to work. He just vanished. Muhammad had a magnifying glass on him from early on, but the police they didn't find anything that could really incriminate him. Even though the police had insufficient evidence against him, though, the court of public opinion really felt like there was enough circumstantial evidence to look into Muhammad further, and people really question if police could have looked into him further, if they could have called him in for official questioning, if they maybe could have done some actual forensics on the inside of the house. It just didn't seem like they were putting the pressure on him in the beginning, and that's why he was able to get away. Now, Muhammad had an entire family before that apparently he lived with in the Texas area. He had a wife, he had a few children, and there was a history of abuse in this family unit at the hands of Muhammad. There were records of him threatening his wife, his ex-wife. There was even an instance of stalking, and he allegedly made really alarming threats to, God, this is like crazy, hit someone with a bat and bury them in the backyard or throw them away in the dumpster. He made mention often that he had no fear of prison, so consequences didn't really concern him. And it's also alleged that he slapped his daughter in the face and has not been able to contact his family at all. His ex-wife said, "No more, don't contact us. We don't want anything to do with you." So given his concerning past and him vanishing after Wendy went missing, people are just like, well, we don't understand like how he wasn't looked into immediately when Wendy disappeared. Nobody knows where Muhammad is still to this day, and it's believed that he's either in the United States or Mexico. He actually had his passport revoked because of outstanding warrants, which are still outstanding to this day, involving his situation with his ex-wife. So he couldn't have gone far. There is a theory that maybe Wendy was about to tell him that she planned on leaving him and moving in with her daughter. Like I told you guys, they were looking to get a house together. So some people have speculated when she broke the news to him, he said, "Oh no, you're not going anywhere," did whatever he did, and then left. Some people speculate that maybe he took his own life, that maybe the reason he hasn't been found is because he made himself unfindable. There's no way to know. This is all speculation. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, okay? I'm not trying to get sued out here, but it's just a lot of things that look a little fishy. There was one reported sighting of Wendy in a town called Shakopee that police did follow up on, but it was found out that this was a case of mistaken identity. Literally nobody has seen or really heard from Wendy. There has been no activity on any of her accounts either. Her last phone usage was on June 2nd, which is the day after Anissa last heard from her. So whatever happened, if it had to have happened after she used her phone on June 2nd. A second search of the river was conducted within a month of the first search. By this time, the levels of the water had significantly gone down, but unfortunately, there was no discovery. There were no remains found. So remember how I told you that her tire was slashed on her car that was parked behind CVS? I wonder the significance of that, because we can't just sit here and say that that is not tied into her disappearance at all. What are the chances that somebody just randomly gets their tire slashed? I don't think people were running amok around CVS out here just slashing tires randomly. It seems like a possibility could be that somebody slashed her tire while she was in CVS. Again, this was a CVS that she went to quite often. This was a regular stop of hers. Perhaps somebody slashed a tire, and then when she got in her car to drive away, after realizing that she had a flat, she pulled over, and then whatever happened between her and another person happened. We don't know. I don't know if police ever even looked at CCTV footage to see if somebody slashed her tire in the parking lot, or to see if there were doorbell cameras on the street that she had finally pulled over and parked on. We don't even know if she parked the car. We literally know nothing. But the idea of her just leaving on a whim, starting a new life without her daughter and the rest of her family, is unsubstantiated. There's no reason to really think that she would have done that. Outside of her relationship with Muhammad, she was generally a very happy woman. And that eliminates the other option, which is her taking her own life. I mean, she was not in a mindset to do that as far as the people around her could tell. there are situations that are outliers, but there were no warning signs of her wanting to do this. And if she had, hypothetically, how could she then hide her remains so efficiently? She wouldn't have been able to. So the possibility of her taking her own life is just extremely unlikely. It's even more unlikely than her just running off and fleeing and starting a new life somewhere else. But essentially there are many theories and no concrete answers. We don't know where she is. Anissa has said that the aftermath of all of this has been extremely frustrating and overwhelming for her. She not only lost her mom, but she has been the sole searcher for her mom. She has been working tirelessly for any answers to no avail. She said that she's constantly in this state of trying to figure out how to balance living her life and learning how to enjoy her life, and also constantly feeling like she's not doing enough for her mom. She always feels like there is more to do, like she can't rest. And one thing that was upsetting to hear for me was that she still goes around town and hangs flyers every once in a while, but over the years, she's kind of just noticed that businesses take them down within a week or so, and it's made her feel like her efforts were in vain and that people are slowly forgetting. Anissa does check in with the police from time to time to see if there are any updates, but she was told during one of these check-ins that a homicide in the area was the primary focus for the department at the time, leaving her obviously concerned about how often and for how long her mom's disappearance will remain on the back burner. Why can't there be some sort of allocation of the force? So some officers working some cases while others working some cases. It just seems like there is so much potential still in the case that to not pursue it is irresponsible. It just seems like there is still so much more potential. I mean, there are cases from decades ago that get solved with forensic evidence. And there are cases from, 10 years ago that have been solved with camera footage. There's just too much room for opportunity here to feel settled with the end result. Wendy's case is still considered a missing persons case. The investigation is not considered a criminal investigation because there are no official suspects. There is no person of interest even officially. And Anissa has not been completely satisfied with what the police have done, but she said that they do still check in with her from time to time. They'll call her if they get any new leads, but it's not very frequent, and they are still getting leads, but a lot of them, obviously all of them, are not resulting in any findings or any real clues of what happened to Wendy. But according to the police, they have not forgotten about her, and the lack of an end result is not due to a lack of effort, but a lack of evidence. I mean, you can do with that what you will, but I feel like in these cases there's always more that can be done, so maybe that's why I'm grasping at can we do more here? But it really just seems like there is more that could have been done, and Anissa has voiced her opinion on it that she doesn't really feel like enough was done here. But needless to say, she has not given up. Anissa has said that she hopes that a resolution is not as far away as 10 years from now, but she's gonna work until she brings her mom home, until she knows what happened. Losing her mom was hard enough, but losing her mom to this mystery with no answers, no clues, no direction has been extremely painful for her. Wendy Khan, at the time of her disappearance, was 46 years old, 5 foot 5 inches tall, and I've seen different reports, but about 150 to 180 pounds. She has auburn hair and green eyes and was last seen on June 1st, last heard from on June 1st of 2018. I will have information in the description box for who you can contact if you see Wendy or if you have any information about what possibly happened to her. And there is an interview that Anissa did about her mom's disappearance. I saw it on Facebook. It's about a 40-minute interview. She's very candid and she speaks very openly, which is nice to see that she expresses herself very freely. She doesn't feel like she has to filter anything. She's very honest, and she just mainly cares about spreading awareness, spreading the word. She wants people to know about what happened. I kid you not, I typed in on YouTube her name, maybe 2 videos popped up, and then some Wendy Williams stuff popped up, and then it was this, I don't know, it looked like a pageant queen or model popped up who maybe has the same name. And then I typed in her name and missing, and there were 4 or 5 videos maybe, but I had to sift through other videos to find, like, it just, social media and the presence of cases on social media is a very big reflection in this day of age of what's actually happening in real life, in real time. Cases get covered like it's nobody's business these days. So when there's a situation like this, where there are so many glaring red flags, crimson flags waving in the wind, and there's basically no coverage on platforms that cover this stuff constantly, it's like, okay, come on. But be sure to share the story, share the video. If you don't want to share the video, post a picture of her on your Instagram or your Twitter. Just share the message. You never know. If you see something, say something. You never know what you could come across, of who might know something but they're holding it in, or who may have seen something but they just don't realize it until they see the picture of her. We truly never know the impact that we can make. The goal is always to bring these people home, and I'm hoping that by creating this video, I can help Anissa in her efforts to bring her mother home and find closure. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Don't forget, if you have recommendations, hit me up on IG. You can find me at sunnyshade.v. Y'all have been sliding into my DMs and I love it. Thank you so much for hitting me up and sending me case recommendations. I promise I look into every single one. And I also want to thank you so much for joining me today. You know how much it means to me to have you here. I'm not gonna get emotional on y'all on this wonderful evening, but I do want to genuinely thank you for joining me as always. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are, and I appreciate you. Have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. And I'll hang out with you next time. All right, guys. Peace.